Hey everyone, Austin Schneider here. Welcome to Rise Podcast, where we talk about real influence, self-development, and entrepreneurship. All right, everyone, welcome to Rise Podcast. Super excited because we have good friend, mentor, coach, leader, Mr. Alan Andersen here. And if this conversation, this next 40 or so minutes is as good as a lot of the conversations that we have offline, then this is going to be freaking dialed, and we're going to help somebody today. So, Alan, thank you so much again. Firstly, would love to just kind of have some context on you. So why don't you just tell people who you are and what it is that you do so magnificently.
Yeah, I don't. You should get your money back because I don't know who he just described. Honestly, in fact, actually, I just came from an organization and led with. As I'm getting to know them, I talked to the CEO once, and talking to his leadership team, and just said, "Hey, look, this isn't you know more and I know less, or you and I know more and you know less. It's you know different and I know different. If we put that together, magic will happen." And I think I learned that because through a course of events, I've come to realize that there's a huge difference between knowledge and wisdom. And the gap between that knowledge and wisdom, if we look at them like poles, the way we gap that or we build a bridge over it is prudence. And I think I learned prudence through being foreclosed on in the Great Recession, get laid off, a week later find out we're pregnant with our first kid, and it's like, okay, what do we do? And then get back on our feet, get debt free, realize I love training coaching, and get hired by a consulting firm only to get fired. And so that bridge of prudence was not something that I learned in a book. It wasn't something that I learned proactively. I learned it very much reactively. So a little in jest, but really all kidding aside, that's why in all those nice things you said, like, that's not all I want to do. Is let's talk shop and let's get to know one another. And whether that's, with a team or an individual or whatever, I really believe that you know different, I know different. If we're supposed to team up, then good things are going to happen. So there's a curveball for you.
That's the Alan way of putting things.
Yeah, to an extent, right? I mean, I think, I think the first step on prudence, that bridge over knowledge and wisdom, that first step is humility. Mm-hmm. And like we've talked about, you and I, we used to share something in common called gray hair. Then I turned my late 20s and lost it all. And then I got laid off, and then I got foreclosed on, and then I got fired and all these things. And I think all I'm sharing is something that's a very first world, easy pain. Mm-hmm. I don't want to diminish it by any means, but when I say easy, I mean I have all my limbs. I can still think, I can still work, I can still figure things out, I can learn. And so what my job is how do we partner with people and look at it as a collaboration versus let me impress you with the things I know. We just make it a spinning contest, which at the end of the day, maybe you win the battle, but you don't win the war. Yeah. And I think that goes personally and professionally for that matter. Yeah. So now that I've completely derailed us, Austin Schneider, what do we do? How do we get us back on track?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing about you, Alan, that I really like is your giftedness of seeing things that maybe people cannot see. Specifically me in a leadership role, I really appreciate the ability to reach out to you and ask you for feedback, ask you for advice, and you have this tactic style leadership vision on other people that you can really pull things out of them. I guess to kind of get on track with that in mind, what is leadership? Because you're coaching a lot of people, diverse types of companies, diverse range of people. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, when they think of leadership, they think of title. They think of how much money they make. They think of how hard they hustle at work. What's your definition of leadership after writing books on it and seeing so many companies that you're invested in as a resource?
One fact check. So I'm writing a book. I haven't written multiple books, but I have read multiple books. So just
read multiple books.
Okay. Yeah. I think the big thing is that I've come to realize, again, the hard way is, practically speaking, we're all leaders, period. And leader, if you look at the definition, is not have a qualification, which it should in my opinion, which is healthy leader. I don't want to get too deep into the woods with etymology and all those different things, but at the end of the day, Hitler was a leader. In fact, he was a good leader. He was effective. Horrid person, right? So when I think of leader, I always want to put healthy first, which means I'm going to show up almost as a servant leader. I'm going to serve you. I want to care for you. And then secondly, it's influence. And so when I say we're all leaders, for me, if we have healthy influence on somebody, it doesn't matter your life stage. Some of my kids, or 2 of my 3 kids, are great leaders and working on being healthy. Third one, jury's still out on, right? She's young, but when we talk about leader, in my estimation, in my experience, the ones that pass the test of time, the ones that win the game, have healthy influence. And they only have healthy influence because they show up thinking, how can I serve you? Now, I think you're either selfish or selfless, and you learn that proactively or reactively. You learn that the easy way or the hard way, or fill in the blank, and those are binary things, but let's call it healthy influence. And it doesn't matter your life stage. You can be a leader in one life stage, go to the next, and now you got to start over. Your leadership level, it really varies on who you can serve and how you can help. So my definition, healthy influence, less important of the stage, less important of the title. It's, can I show up and can I serve you? Can I care for you? How can I help you? And
so do you find healthy leadership, healthy influence, to be a challenge for a lot of people? And do you think that society and generations and all that stuff have affected people in their perception of what true leadership is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the hardest time to actually be a leader, primarily because, let me step back, and I'll never forget learning this. I already shared faith, family, firing, foreclosure. So if the best things in my life are next to faith and family are getting foreclosed on and getting fired, that means that I got to work my way out of a jam, right? A tight spot, which I couldn't have done solo. I certainly couldn't have done without my wife, who I married up big time, way out of my league. And ultimately, my children helped tease these things out. Like I don't think I would have had have the perspective that I do without my kids. In that process though, as we were working our way out of our hole, I remember we were at the place we needed a new vehicle. And so I was looking for vehicles. This is late 2010s, 11s, 12, somewhere in there. And I came across a Bugatti. Those are pretty sick. My mind was blown when I learned you can go finance a Bugatti. Now I get the game of do the Steve Jobs where it's a new car every 6 months, so you don't have to have a license plate and all those different things. But what's really interesting is we, in my estimation, have changed the way we look at value in this current day and age compared to the way it really was in all of history previously, in the sense of, practically speaking, I'm okay with debt. I'm okay with different, I'm okay with, being over leveraged at times. Now, doesn't mean, what I'm not saying is like people strive for that, but I think that the point I want to make with this is the reason it's so hard to be a leader in this current context is because I can think about getting something, AKA a reward, before I've put in all the hard work or responsibility to get there. And so if I can go finance something, I didn't put in the hard work to get there. And so now when you see people driving around, like I care a lot less about vehicles, and maybe that's just with age and those different things. What I care about is, what's your work ethic? What's your process? Because again, going back to healthy influence, I'm thinking past the test of time. I'm thinking long game. So you and I, 30s, 40s, we're winning for right now. Not guaranteed that we're gonna win at 50s or 60s. Each decade should get better and better and better. And how many people do we know that unfortunately flame out? And I think it's because we've started to taste the fruit of our labor, not because of hard work and responsibility and work ethic, but because we can go get what we want today.
Wow.
And so what that does for us is, and maybe I'll tie it all off with this, and this is why it's so hard. Let's just say, let's take faith and religion out of it. So for every single human, right? From atheist to agnostic to a faith-based person, why do we do the right thing when nobody's looking? Easy to say that in a religious context. But what if you're not religious? Well, why should I do the right thing? Well, the answer to that is, I do the right thing when nobody's looking because it creates muscle memory.
Yeah.
And so the more I do that, I may be doing things poorly all the time, and no one ever knows, so I never get caught. But the moment that the game is on the line, the ball is in my hand, I have to take the winning shot or I have to make the right decision. Don't think you're going to make that right decision because you haven't been doing it all along. So it's really less about, are you getting caught or not getting caught? Is it this, that, and the other? What I care about is, for us, how do I start practicing delayed gratification and focus more on, I want to know your process. I want to know your work ethic, because those things help me realize how you're going to be at 50, 60, 70, 80, so on and so forth.
So good.
Does that make sense?
So good. And what I interpreted when you were thinking about that, just maybe my millennial mind, it's like, okay, you see these people on Instagram, on social media, doing the Instagram flex or whatever.
Exactly.
It's like they're getting these BMWs, these Mercedes, whatever, because they can.
Yes.
Versus let me humble myself, work my tail off,
No doubt.
build some skills, and then when the time is right, I can reward myself.
No doubt.
Versus try to get ahead of myself. And that's such a cool point, the healthy influence versus like the non-healthy influence. Because it's so easy to be an influencer on social media or influencer about business or whatever, but it's like, okay, is that a healthy influence, or are you just striving for this? And that's why you see like so many people go down this rabbit hole, and then they're in social media, or they're just in a space that they like are just consumed by, and it's controlling their life, especially social media.
And I had never thought about it until this. You've helped me really understand social media and the gram and Facebook and all those things. For a long time, I didn't realize people were called an influencer. And so I came up to this understanding of healthy influence as the definition of leadership, or at least a core component of that, before knowing those things. But what you helped me just connect the dots on is the folks striving to be influenced because they haven't had all that work ethic that you just talked about, or muscle memory, or proper form, or fill in the blank. I don't know what their level of satisfaction is. I don't know how fulfilled they are. I don't know what a net positive. I remember growing up being told, like, you better be a positive contribution to society. I don't know if that's still a thing or not. Certainly it is in the Andersen home. But for us, I want to preach the message of healthy influence because I learned the hard way. So I'm not coming to you saying, hey, Austin, do this, that, and the other. Like, dude, we had our 15th wedding anniversary last year and just got debt free. It's humbling for me to even say that out loud right now. But I've also found freedom in being transparent and being candid, and that's why it's like I don't have anything to prove. I can't make you like me more, or I can't, it's like all those things, whatever. And I think unfortunately I'm not for, what I don't want somebody to hear me saying is like, don't go get a loan for a car that you need. I'm saying don't live outside of your means. That's called healthy leadership. And let's be right sized to our day and age, because if I can be a faithful steward, if I can take care of these things well now, the likelihood is I'm going to learn and grow and have another opportunity, and then another opportunity, and another opportunity. And what gets me up is my process. It is my work ethic. It is those things. It's not the title. The minute that you start to try to lead from your title, you've already lost.
Big time.
Period.
So if someone's listening to this or watching this, and they're like, okay, I want to be a healthy leader, or I want to be a leader one day, and maybe they're consuming social media, or maybe have this unhealthy perception of influence and what actual leadership is. Practically, what can we do as people, as normal people, to like provide a more healthy process that will provide a healthy leadership, which will provide longevity in our leadership or careers or just life in general, versus maybe creating habits that are unhealthy?
That's an excellent question. I want to take a step back and share the context. For this world to grow healthy and continue to be healthy, which if somebody's thinking deeply, like, well, wait a minute, are you saying we're not healthy? Are you saying we're not good? Certainly we're not like, they were 2,000 years ago where they didn't know things. I think what we've got to understand is our context that we're in. So quick pause. Number one, how many people are there on this planet? Nearly 8 billion. Quick pause. How many people are there in the US right now? 330 million and growing. So instead of me trying to fit in and impress anybody in that category, I need to just take a step back and think through, for me in my world, who's in my sphere of relationship that I'm responsible for? Now, let me answer the question. The reason it gets so difficult is because instead of me trying to impress you or your team or whomever, it becomes less about impressing and how do I impact? And that's the distinction. So when I show up places, I don't want to impress anybody. In fact, the worst thing I could do is impress you, because you might be impressed with me for a day until you hear I'm human. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, ooh, time out, I have to use a restroom break. Ooh, but we don't talk about restroom breaks because that's really, no, we're all human. That is the dumbest thing for us to think that I should project the cropped and edited version of myself to impress you. Mm-hmm. And I'm speaking from experience. So this isn't me talking to you or your team or anybody listening. This is, I've had to learn this the hard way to realize I would rather make a positive impact on your life than impress you, because impressing is much more superficial than impacting. Mm-hmm. So when we start to think through leadership, we don't realize, I made a comment earlier that we're all leaders. We don't realize that number one, I've got to take care of myself first. What is health for me? And I mean that from like eating and diet to sleep to what type of work should you be doing to where can you add value. Then we start to think through, in my core unit, maybe, so in my case, it's my wife, my 3 children, people in our neighborhood, our church community, my work community. And so now I've got a very clearly defined group of people that I am impressing, but it's not really impressing, it's actually impacting. Mm-hmm. And so now for me, I have a high degree of clarity, which then allows me to know how to be in alignment. Mm-hmm. And then that allows me to make sure that I'm showing up in a way that is helpful. So when we ask that question, from my conviction, from my estimation, it's really about who is it you're supposed to impact. And some of us, we were talking about this yesterday actually on a business front, of some of us are supposed to be a big fish in a small pond, and some of us are supposed to be a small fish in a big pond. Yeah. It's less about the pond. Let's care less about the thing you're driving or the clothes you're wearing or the place you're at, and more about how do I just show up and impact you. I want to make the most of this moment. And if I do that from the lens of how I care for you all, I think that actually starts to align a lot of leadership things. Yeah. Because your definition, my definition, is healthy influence, not impressing, not trying to make you like me. It's really about that. I'm going to impact you for the positive.
Yeah, so
that makes sense.
100%. And what I think about too is, John Maxwell always says, like, what I tell myself every single day is like, who can I help?
Yes,
and
exactly.
Like the big letters, like, who can I help? And I also think about leadership.
That's right.
Just in my front and business and just personal life, it's like multiplication. You know, it's like if you're just impressing 1,000 people, you're not going to multiply anybody. Yeah. You're just going to drive your own ego, and people are going to say, "Oh wow, Austin, like you're so flippin' cool." Like, oh my gosh. And then you leave the room feeling good, but did you impact anybody? Yeah. You know, so if you can personally impact somebody, imagine if that shifts their life, or if they take what you impacted to them and then they go impact somebody else. It's like that domino effect.
Yes.
You know, of impact. You know, if you can just provide value to people and help people, even if they're below you, title wise, it's like, man, like that's real influence.
It goes up and down the chain, and I even think, you know, it can be your direct report, or it can be your direct report or your supervisor or boss, mm-hmm. whoever you report to. When your focus is adding value, mm-hmm. that increases the likelihood of impacting. Yeah, exactly right. And I think one of the things we started thinking through with our kids is, we don't say, have you been a good little boy or girl? We say, were you helpful? Mm-hmm. Because the last thing I want is somebody to just behaviorally get it, but not like get it. Mm-hmm. So I think for us as leaders, we've got to understand there's really 4, depending on how you look at this, there's really 4 or 5 stages of leadership. It's You need to first lead yourself, then you can lead others, then you can lead leaders, then you can be a leader making leader. And that's that multiplication you're talking about. But I don't get to be a leader making leader until I've done these things really well.
Yep.
Now, on the reverse of it, it can look like I'm a leader making leader if I'm, in a static social media pose. What I always think through, there's really only been a handful of people that I've really come to say, I want to emulate that person as we get to know folks, because what you realize is somebody may have a really, really strong professional muscle, but then personally, kids hate them.
Yeah, wow.
Partner doesn't even want to be there, but they feel like they've got golden handcuffs or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So if our focus is a net benefit of influence, of impact, of help, of adding value, if we can think, how do I be most helpful?
Yeah.
Then it actually helps me make me less nervous when I'm meeting people that I really want to impress. And I'll think about, I don't know if anybody in your crew will recognize this, but I actually got this from a friend, former military guy. His name's Jocko, and his team. And there's not a lot of people I get nervous around, because I know I want to respect you personally, professionally, and know you've got those things. You don't usually find those things out till much later. But I got a chance to meet Jocko and his team, and I've been working with them for a while when they do leadership conferences. And what I realized is the reason that when I first met him and his team, that it went so well, and I think ultimately why they invited me to start helping out, is I wasn't thinking, how do I impress Jocko, or how do I impress Leif, or Jamie, or Jen, or fill in the blank. It was, how do I help? And I literally showed up early to their first leadership conference just to be helpful. Yeah. And paid my own way and did all these things. And then the byproduct that was, wow, you're not that bad, you're not that good, but you're not that bad. Why don't you join our team? Yeah. And so I think that was a helpful, practical example, because I think for most of us, we have cognitive awareness. We don't have experiential application. And that's the shift that I want us to start thinking through. Cognitive awareness lets me be an influencer. Experiential application, that's my work ethic. That's my process. That helps me go from lead self, lead others, lead leaders, be a leader making leader, because we're focused on the process. So instead of us trying to figure out how do I impress, how do I help? How do I add value? How do I impact you?
So maybe someone here is, or someone listening is like, okay, maybe they're an entrepreneur. Because this is something that I battled with personally early on, where it's like, okay, I have this vision of this company I want to build. I don't have time to ask this person if I can help them, because they're going to derail me and they'll take me to a new place. Or if I'm just asking people how I can help them, then it's just not going to fulfill my vision, because I have this idea for this company and I'm just work, grow. What would you say to someone like that?
I'm going to take a step back again and realize, how does business work? And business works, I'm going to oversimplify. You will always be in business as long as you're thinking, how do I add more in value than I take in return? So when you think of Brantegic, when you think of the entrepreneur, the owner operator, the solopreneur, fill in the blank, if our focus is always, how do I add more in value than I take in return, you'll always be in business. And the only way to do that is to think, how do I add value in the moment? And what you've had to learn the hard way, and thankfully we've been proactive about it, is you're adding value initially when you were the owner operator is for your clients. Now, who's your primary client? It's an internal client called your team member, right? 100%. And so that's a mental mind shift, where now what you're doing is you're adding value to your team, and now you've started to multiply that, and now you're helping these team members go help all your clients. And if you think about it, from our first meeting, months ago now to half a year ago to now, we've probably grown 100+%, or maybe 3%. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? But because we proactively, not easy, but diligently realized, how do I add value? Your value, the person you were to serve, shifted.
100%.
Does that seem right?
So good. And I think I started businesses with the me in mind, and that produced no fruit. And it was shallow, right? And the moment you start focusing at, maybe it's the customer, maybe you're helping the customer versus employees, it's like, man, your business not only will grow, but it'll grow organically with a foundation of helpfulness, with a foundation of solving problems, versus if you have a vision, you just want to do this, but you're not hearing any feedback, you're not being helpful, then like good luck, you know?
And that's the key right there. We don't realize your ability to add value is because you're actually listening.
And you're solving problems. It's simple.
But so many of us come in with a preconceived notion of, oh, I've seen this before, I'm going to help you. And I think that's what most businesses and most individuals don't realize is each moment is different. Each moment is new. Each moment is an opportunity for me to practice muscle memory or practice healthy muscle memory so that I can make sure I don't just do it the way I used to always do it.
Yeah, and I would say that's where
that fully present.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
I would say that's where like the first key came in for me was leading myself well.
Yes.
It's like once you can get over yourself and then you start growing and the business starts growing and you're like, okay, shoot, like I got to figure out myself, and then you introduce the second and then the third and then maybe the fourth at one point. So it's really interesting that you're like just nailing on the head, but yes, help people. Maybe it's the customers at first. Maybe you can just seek to them. Don't be selfish, and humility. You know, it's like, why don't people just have humility?
And honestly, let's pause for a moment. Why don't we?
Yeah.
At least in the North America area, we live in the Disneyland of the world.
No doubt.
So that's part of the reason it's not some catchy next to faith and family, foreclosure firing. Those actually were moments that were so painful that I really didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And that pain that I didn't even know I could experience really helped get me really clear.
Yeah.
And I think most of us, we don't know strength.
No.
We don't know pain. We don't know debilitating. Now, I don't want to diminish anybody who's gone through that, but I do think for us, we have a layer of comfort. Mm-hmm. And who got stronger, bigger, better, faster, being comfortable?
Yeah.
Is my friend Leif says, there is no growth in the comfort zone. And I think that's exactly right, where we're so focused on comfort. And I think honestly, especially for your peers and your colleagues, you've all grew up in this day and age where what is the number one thing marketed probably across the board, but especially to, let's say 30 somethings, it's entertainment. You deserve to be entertained. You deserve to get certain things. In fact, even I was on a flight the other day, so the stewardess is going through the thing and all right, please look at the thing and we'll get, information in here. On the front of it, it said, take care. And then it opened up and it just said, just plain entertaining. It was like, so playing on words, they spelled plane with aeronautically. And what I realized is if we really want people to be thinking about adding value, it should be give care. If we really want somebody to learn how to add value, we should say, listen well, be fully present, don't be distracted, just make the most of the moment. So we don't realize those things are actually a muscle. And until I'm working that out, it's actually going to become atrophied, and then I won't be able to show up in the moment with the game on the line, with the ball in my hand, and likely win because I haven't been doing it. Mm-hmm. So the time to build trust, the time to have clarity, the time to add value is not in the trenches, it's thinking about it beforehand and being okay with doing something that isn't sexy. I mean, if we want to go here, we can, but I get to do my dream job every day now because I work 2 really terrible jobs. Mm-hmm. And that's not the only reason, but in those moments, I learned humility. And I think it's hard to learn humility when we're so comfortable.
100%. Yeah, so even like starting Braintegic, people are always like, hey, I want to do what you do. I want to do a marketing agency. Like, how do I become a CEO? How do I become a leader? It's like, okay, well, let me just tell you a story about everything that I did. Do you want to did what I did? Do you want to put in the work? Do you want to do everything that created this? Do you want to put your
take on
livelihood?
All the risk?
100%. So, and then they're kind of like, oh, okay, well, just start here. Be faithful with little, and then you'll be faithful with much. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think back, even reflecting everything that I've been through, and it's like 5 years ago, if I would have thought I would be here, 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh, I want this, I want that, I want this, but I wasn't ready. I'm on the potter's wheel. I'm getting formed right now to be prepared for it.
Yes.
Because if you're not prepared for what's going to come to you, then it's just going to fall right through your fingertips. But
That's right.
I think it's we would call it God has a way of using us and preparing us for really what He has for us, even vocationally. You know, it's insane to reflect and look back on it. So, question about like leadership. I'm sure people are here like, okay, I want to be a leader, but I just don't have it. Do you think that leaders are born, or do you think that leaders are created or formed or molded?
Yes. So we haven't talked about this. I'll do a quick overview. I'm literally writing about this right now. So the book we're working on, me and my co-author, who does have good hair and is way smarter than me, actually is a PhD. Our book is called well played. Our book is called More Better People. And if I'm honest, I don't love that title, but I can't shake it, because the more I think about it, that's the exact thing we need, is more better people today more than ever before.
Sure.
And so on one hand, the reason I don't love it is because I don't think the answer is more. But what I also realize is actually what the right answer is more people. And so as we're going through this endeavor, the thing that I really want to highlight is it encapsulates a lot of the pain and the strain that I had to go through unnecessarily, but I didn't know that at the time. And so one of the things that we talk about, so we basically start with what drives you. Most people don't understand actually what drives them. And when I mean what drives you, I mean like ultimately what pushes you. And I've come to understand that there's really 4 drivers of every single thing you do. So every single action you take stems back to one of these 4 reasons. You can have more than 4, but it's ultimately one of these 4. And it's either, and the first 2 we know, the seeking of fame, fortune, freedom, or faith. Those are the 4 drivers for every single thing you do. The next chapter then breaks into, well, is that nature or nurture? And it's really a quandary, because how much of the time do you hear nature or nurture? And the answer is yes. So we're all born with DNA in a particular wiring that then our culture or our context, our nurture, shapes. So you're born with a certain natural inclination that then is formed or shaped or edited. And so that's now where now let's fast forward to our current day and age, where pretty sure it was Charlie Tremendous Jones back in the 70s or 80s said, you'll be the same person 5 years from today, except for the people you spend time with and the books you read. So that's what we've learned nowadays. 2,000 years ago, you couldn't really change your culture. You were in it. Now we can say, oh, I'm growing up in a self-sabotaging family unit. I'm going to go create my own family, or I'm going to get out of this, or I'm going to travel. And so that's why we get into this quandary of, is it nature, is it nurture? Because we don't realize it's actually both and. And so what we want to do is, first and foremost, assess your own wiring. Figure out what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Then once you understand your nature, then start to look at the context of your nurture. Who are your top 5 friends? What are the things that you enjoy doing? Where are the people that you're spending time with? What trajectory are they on? And if we can pause and look at that, we start to see it's almost like a mirror. We start to see like, oh, I'm taking on that characteristic over time. I think maybe I'll add one last thing to this. The key that I would encourage in all this, so maybe step 1 of this, on the pathway of prudence, step 1 is humility. The second thing is patience. And I don't know which one goes first. I'm verbally processing with you, but I think that goes into this nature nurture concept. Don't think I'm going to change my friends today and be tomorrow dialed in. I'm pretty sure it was Jim Rohn actually who said, we underestimate what we can do in a year. I got that wrong. We overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And I'm actually right at the 10-year mark of going through all that junk. And I was reflecting on this I do a Google Doc each year for a journal. And each morning I've got silence and solitude and these rhythms built in. And I can't believe it's been a decade ago. A decade ago, I will share one of the worst jobs I had. And I don't mean worse as in like people should do it. I think for me and my wiring, like it was a solo job by myself. And so there's a lot of people making a lot of good money doing this, to be clear, especially in the Northwest actually. But for me, a solo job, I was a professional pooper scooper. So I would go to your yard, and one of the taglines is that we'll pick up where your dog left off, right? And so here I am, solo, highly, I'm very much an extrovert. I want to be around people. I want to serve you, help you in those things. That time though was really refining for me, and that was actually when the seal got broken on me of really getting into effective audio listening. I consumed more podcasts and more books in that year. That got me to think of a broader picture. So what I'm really working to do is walk a tightrope here of like, I'm not diminishing pooper scoopers. Like, you know, there's good money to be made in jobs that people don't necessarily want to do. And you also really need to know your wiring. And when I was solo, like by myself, like not awesome. Like I probably would rather flip burgers because I can at least be around people. And so I think that's the thing that we've got to just pause. It's nature and nurture, and we've got to be patient and make sure that we're plugging into the right context and the right culture. Does that make sense how I'm kind of breaking that down?
Yeah. What I'm hearing is figure out what you enjoy, figure out what your strengths are, whether that's Clifton Strengths Finder, your Enneagram, there's a bazillion tests online to figure out what maybe your gifts could be. And then
blind spots.
And then surround yourself by those people. And I think, man, like one, I would not be where I am without good people around me.
No doubt.
You know, I was into drugs at one point in my life. I was just drinking every single weekend, like had no motivation, wanted to be a construction worker, you know, until I got around people who could call out my giftedness, who could motivate me, who could inspire me, people I wanted to be like. And I think it's so easy in this day and age with YouTube, podcasts, audiobooks. It's like, my gosh, just you have a mentor on freaking Spotify.
In your computer that's in your pocket.
100%. You know, it's like you can dig into any leadership thing or any motivation thing all the time. And that's seriously shaped me.
So here's the thing that gratefully you and I have tapped into. One of my favorite quotes of all time, Derek Sievers said, "If more knowledge were the answer, we'd all be billionaires with six-pack abs," or something to that end.
Yeah, so good.
It's not about more knowledge, it's about execution. Most of us know what we need to do. In fact, let me give a quick shortcut. You want to grow from point A to point B, work through this progression, and it'll make it all make sense. I have to have accurate awareness, so I need awareness. I then need acceptance. That acceptance then helps me decide what my action needs to be, and it's either proactive or it's reactive, or corrective for that matter, and then accountability. And if I go through that process of, am I accurately aware? Do I actually accept who I am? Am I taking the proper action? Who's holding me accountable? And it's really intrinsic motivation. It's not like, I'm gonna do this because I know you're gonna beat me up if I don't do it. No, that's more of for somebody to act like a coach. That's why our firm, we don't necessarily just do consulting, we don't do training, we primarily index on coaching because I want to work myself out of a job as quickly as possible. Because there's 8 billion people on this planet, 330 million Americans, and a lot of people that have no idea how to tell the difference between their head from their rear end. And so we've got to help them get the clarity to see those things. So if I'm accurately seeing, or with the proper awareness, with the right acceptance, with the proper action, and the proper accountability, that's how you grow from point A to point B in a sustainable, long-term manner. And that's the part of the reason I'm writing this book is I don't hear people talking about the long game. I want you to win the long game. I want your 40s to be better than your 30s, which will guarantee be better than your 20s, right? So for me, I want my 50s to be better than my 40s, and 60s and 70s and so on and so forth. And that's how I then start to set up my kids for when. That's how I set up the people in my sphere of relationship. And if I can do it that way because I'm focused on value, then it allows me to have a repeatable process, and it's less about the losses. Because you either win or learn, right? And it's less about those losses. I can learn from it. Was I accurately aware? Did I actually accept the deal? Did I have the right action? Do I have the right accountability?
Yeah, so good.
So it's not about more information. It's about action.
Yeah, big time. And just taking the first step.
I mean, isn't the first step the hardest? Yeah. I think there's actually a number of great quotes out there about that.
Totally.
We love the chaos of our own comfort. I love my chaos too much for me to actually get my junk in gear. And so you can pull out chaos and you can put, for my wiring is chaos. I mean, I have an answer for the question you don't even know you're gonna ask me. Yeah. And that's hard. I gotta slow my brain down and say, take a deep breath, follow through, get it. Some people, it's not chaos in their brain, it's comfort, and they just love their comfort more than any other comfort. So it's just a comfort party all the time. Some people, it's pain. Some people, it's their addiction. Some people, it's laziness. We all have our own thing.
I think a lot of it is ego too.
100% ego.
Because I think I saw this graphic or whatever you want to call it today or whatever that really stood out to me. So it was two ladders side by side. One ladder had like really big gaps, and the person was just like reaching for it and like couldn't reach it because it was just like so far out. And then the second one was a normal ladder with just steps, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like if we are setting goals that are so out of reach, you know, it's going to be discouraging. You know, it's going to be a burst to my ego, or I'm not going to be able to reach this, so I'm just going to stay on that first step. Versus the person who just takes the first step, then takes the next step, then takes the next one, then takes these little steps, and then eventually they're gonna race to the top because this person's going to try to skip all these steps because their ego doesn't feel like they can do these little steps. It's like they want to get to the 100th step before they take the first step.
When work or tasks or responsibilities are beneath you, that should be a sobering wake-up call that you probably have some ego work to do.
100%.
Because you're probably not going to learn that lesson. And if we keep putting it off, you're going to learn it when there's too much on the line.
Yeah, big time. Ego is just like such a big deal. We could have an hour conversation about ego.
My ego's huge. Your ego's not even in the room, by the way.
My ego's massive. Come on. So for people maybe watching this or listening, practically, if they want to improve their leadership, maybe it's at work, maybe it's at church, maybe it's with their relationships, maybe they don't know, maybe it's a blind spot that they don't even know. What would you say to that person that they should be maybe focusing on actionably every single day or every single week or creating a rhythm for?
Yeah. Why? Why do you want to improve? So first and foremost, why? If you don't know why you're doing this, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to carry it out. Once you know that why, that purpose then should start to help you create values. What are your value systems? So for me personally, and it's actually moved into our Andersen family, but my values are I strive to be humble, hungry, honest, smart, above all faith. So that why or that purpose creates my values, which then starts to allow me that purpose and values give a vision for what could be. And that vision, which I have for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, etc., allows me then to start taking reverse engineering steps to my daily mission. And I think what happens is we don't really know why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah. And then when push comes to shove, or one of my favorite, King Solomon said this. I think it's in the scriptures. I think it's in the book of Proverbs in chapter 24. But it says, if you fail or if you faint. So both of those are interchangeable. Let's just say if you fail, because I love that. If you fail in the day of adversity, your strength is small. That's it. When you think of the scriptures, you don't think of like, hey, you suck, and then it's usually like, oh, but you can do better, or God loves you, or fill in the blank. There are certain times, if you fail, you suck, and you weren't ready. Now, what does that mean? Good. More time to get better. Good. I have an opportunity to get better. Now, I'm totally stealing that from Jocko's got a wonderful video. Maybe, I don't know if there's show notes, we can put it in there, but I think the idea is I don't know what steps to take because I don't even know why the hell I'm on the process in the first place. If I know my why, that helps me determine what are my values. What are my values? My values are my code of conduct of how I get things done, or really it's code of collaboration. Part of the reason you and I teamed up is because we are value shared. So we have similar values. So when I know, like you and I are talking, I mean, last night I think we talked at after 6 p.m. when most people are like, oh, my favorite TV show's on, or I gotta go binge something. Like, look, I'm not saying there isn't a time to rest and relax, but you should know how you get things done. If you don't know how you get things done, then you probably don't know your why. So start with your why, figure out your values, figure out a vision for what could be. A way to start, super simple, maybe daunting. Somebody's like, oh, you sound like a fatalist. Go write your eulogy. Go write what you would want to be said true of you when you die. Because the good news is there's only two things in life, death and taxes, right? Yeah. So I think practically think at the end, and then that helps you figure out your mission. I think for me, I remember thinking like all the things I've been working toward back right before I was about to get, I guess we were like halfway through our foreclosure. So before I knew we were going to foreclosure, we had some failed short sales. I remember thinking, man, this is gonna detour me. What I didn't realize is that detour is the exact thing I needed. So instead of fighting it, go with it. The minute you try to push a square peg through a round hole unnecessarily, like I'll try and push like 2 or 3 times, but if it doesn't work, then I'll step back and say, okay, wait a minute. I need to just let this play out because there's something I'm missing here.
Yeah.
And so I think start with why, figure out your values, get a vision for what could be, and then reverse engineer for your mission.
It's good. I think it comes down to what you were saying earlier about leading yourself.
100%.
It's like if you can just start by leading yourself well, not just from a company or your business, but like your family and everything, then full circle, your influence will start to creep into other areas.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't think I told you this. I got some really mediocre parenting advice the other day. So I've got a 10, 7, and 4-year-old. You know what I found out after I got the advice? And just, I'm not rude. I've learned humility. I've learned to be patient, ask clarifying questions. You know what I found out? The person doesn't have kids!
Of course.
How blind are you to think how audacious, how big of guts do you think you have to have, or do you think you have, to give parenting advice? I've only been doing it for a decade. Now, admittedly, the reason our kids are good is because my wife.
Yeah.
But like, I've learned some things from her.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, man, this doesn't resonate. Like, I'm not tracking where this came from. And then to find out the person doesn't have kids.
It's like an overweight guy giving you some training advice.
Yeah, dude. Oh, man.
Or a homeless person give you financial advice.
Gosh.
So,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been freaking awesome. I love it. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you or a book or anything that's coming up that you're doing?
I think probably, so there's 2 things. I would say you can go to our website, Shondell Group, which is the firm I'm a partner in. We do leadership development and ultimately just help folks grow from point A to point B, accelerate that process. And then the book is morebetterpeople.com. So
When's it going to come out?
We're trying to finalize that. We just got through first rounds. I would say we'll aim for 2025, and then that way we've got plenty
Cool.
of
Perfect.
probably the next year, give or take a year. So it's I think this is the thing. My take, I think, you know what, you didn't tell me to ask this question, which is silly. I've been on other podcasts. I know this is how they wrap up, but like, I think gratefully I've learned, like, if I can serve you, reach out for sure.
Yeah.
If I can share things to help you not have to learn through foreclosure, those things. I mean, it's pretty sobering to say it took us a decade to get back out of debt free. I'm lucky I didn't lose my marriage. I'm lucky we didn't lose our faith. I'm lucky we, all these things, right? So super fortunate. But you know where I would send people first? I would say, you got to understand why you're on this freaking planet. You have a purpose. There are values in there. You probably don't have a vision or a mission, which means you probably don't know your purpose and you probably don't know your values. So I would say you got to get right with why you're here. Pull the thread on that. And then also, like, if you need something to jumpstart that, there's an excellent book called The Go-Giver. Start with that.
Bob Berg.
And yeah, exactly. John David Mann, Bob Berg, excellent. If you don't have a copy, you can email me. I'll send you a copy.
So good.
So start with how do I add more in value than I take in return? How do I give versus what can I take? Instead of take care, I want to give care.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, man.
I'm sorry to totally just
you're
screw up
good. You're good.
process, but
no. Honored to have you here. Honored to have you just on the podcast and your time and your wisdom. Hopefully we can get you on another time once we're blown up, and hopefully really someone gets something from this, because there's a ton of nuggets in there.
Yeah.
And reach out to Alan, like you said, because he will help you out.
I will send you a book.
He will send you a book.
I'm not
Go-Giver. Great book.
Yeah, that's right. Dude, thanks.
Appreciate you. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening to the Rise podcast. Please do me a favor and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. Share it with a friend if you think it was valuable, and also give it a thumbs up. If you want more content, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Austin R. Schneider, where I'll be dropping snippets of this and other type of content. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel and be on the lookout for weekly podcast episodes just like this one. Thanks, everyone.